Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, on this fabulous Friday for what is going to be nothing short of another jam-packed live stream with yours truly. I hope you've all had a wonderful week and have got a wonderful weekend ahead of yourselves. The cryptocurrency market is ripping, and we're seeing some of your favorite altcoins do spectacular things. We've seen Cardano up over 100% at this point from its low. We've seen the like of HBAR start to move. We're also seeing today the likes of Algorand really starting to do very well. And don't worry, we've got you covered. We're going to be covering it all in this live stream. So really where I want to start is with some ramifications. Bear with us, guys. Audio. So the mic is on, mate. So really want to start, guys, is with some news that broke literally over the past 24 hours in regards to Gary Gensler and the SEC. And what we're witnessing right now, ladies and gentlemen, is a Trump pump. Ultimately, the markets were very much positioned for a Trump victory going into the election, just like they were positioned for a 50 basis point rate cut going into the prior FOMC. Of course, the last FOMC, they did a 25 basis rate cut. But what we're witnessing right now is really a Trump pump, because Trump is very bullish for the cryptocurrency industry. And one reason he's exceptionally bullish for the cryptocurrency industry at large, even though he's a fan of the US dollar, which we can talk about perhaps later on, is because he vowed at the Bitcoin Conference 2024 to remove the infamous Gary Gensler, the arch enemy of the cryptocurrency space. And since then, we have some remarks from the man himself, Mr. Gary Gensler, essentially hinting at his resignation. It's a very kind of emotional speech that I want to share with you guys, because his removal and the restructuring of the SEC has massive ramifications for this industry. They've largely hindered it. They've not in any way, shape, or form, as far as I'm concerned, certainly from where I'm sitting, helped investors. In fact, they've done the exact opposite. They didn't protect you guys from FTX. They didn't protect you from Luna. They didn't protect you from Celsius or any of the other catastrophes that took place in the bear market. And I do believe we're out of the bear market, guys. That's extremely good news in my opinion. But these are some remarks from the SEC staff. Before I close, I want to say something about the SEC and its staff. It's a remarkable agency. The staff and commission are deeply mission-driven, focused on protecting investors, maintaining fair, orderly, and efficient markets, and facilitating capital formation. The lawyers, accountants, economists, policy experts, and other staff generally could make more money working somewhere else. That is, of course, if you don't include the backhand deals that probably many of them have potentially been making. Of course, that is all speculation, or perhaps the jobs that are waiting for them after the SEC, and likely are the reasons why they're going into those jobs after working for a government agency and having those connections. That's typically how this sort of mill works, if you will. They choose, though, to work on behalf of the public here at the SEC. How many of you guys, let me know in the comment section, feel protected in the United States by the SEC? Do you feel like they've done you a favor? In my opinion, they haven't. I don't think they've stepped in. In fact, in many cases, I think they've almost enabled, having met with the likes of Sam Bankman-Fried and his cronies on a number of occasions, the catastrophe that took place, only so that they could then gain that step in order to regulate the industry, which they've done a shocking job at. And really all they've done is stall it, which might have been the plan all along, ready for this moment that we are now currently living in. It's an unbelievable time to be alive, ladies and gentlemen. The very proposition of value itself is being questioned. It's been a great honor to serve with them, doing the people's work and ensuring that our capital markets remain the best in the world. The conclusion: Sam and Jane Gensler, my mom and dad, this is Gary Gensler talking now, never worked in finance or even completed college. When they invested their savings, our family benefited from the securities market common sense rule of the road. The SEC's effective administration of well-regulated securities markets promotes trust. It's what brings investors and issuers to the markets like fans to a football game. I was going to think of a football team that would be similar to the SEC, maybe Man United over the past couple of years. I don't want to offend anybody, by the way. I support a way worse team that's not even in the Premier League. It's in the league below. See if you can guess in the comment section. My accent might give it away. It's what underpins the world's largest capital markets. It's what has contributed to our nation's great economic success these last 90 years. I've been proud, and this is the kicker, guys. This is basically hinting at his resignation. I've been proud to serve with my colleagues at the SEC who, day in, day out, work to protect American families on the highways of finance. He's gone, and he knows it, and he's got till January. In fact, there are rumors circulating that Jay Clayton, the former SEC chair, somebody who has actually been on the likes of Bloomberg and CNBC and came out very much against what the likes of Gensler has been doing. Gensler's out. I was listening to JD Vance. I was calling him DJ Vance the other day to many people's amusement. And what he was saying about Gensler. And actually, JD Vance really understands this industry and the broader scope for it in relation to distributed ledgers, not just being used for an alternative store of value. They essentially can be used for any industry, and in doing so, essentially upgrade it from sending a letter to an email. And he was talking in the case of social medias and how many of his friends are looking into decentralized social medias. And there's going to be a crypto element in that. There's going to be a crypto element in everything, ladies and gentlemen. And Bitcoin just happens to have found the largest use case for now. But I actually think there's going to be distributed ledgers that have a greater use case than money itself. Does money transact? And I think Bitcoin, perhaps you could call money. You couldn't call it a currency. In my opinion, I think it was deliberately designed to be lame, and it would never practically work as a currency in the real world. Certainly not on 2 transactions per second. And I don't think Lightning and these things, even though they have a way of allowing you to put more transactions into the same block, it's kind of directly against Satoshi's vision, which we've moved very far away from now that we see the US ETFs, institutions actually becoming the largest holders of it. They've kind of used our weapon against us in some regards, certainly the masses at large. So Gensler's gone, guys, and this has huge ramifications. And really, since we saw Trump win, the markets have gone pretty crazy. Of course, Bitcoin leads that charge. It is the tide that rises and sinks all ships. And our statement has always been that now is not the time to be betting on Bitcoin dominance at such a high, and that's likely going to roll. We've not seen it yet. And I think that's more of a bullish thing than it is a bearish thing, because it's still to come, in my opinion, certainly with a broader acknowledgement of this space. But it's very interesting, isn't it? Everything that's going on right now and that has gone on since Trump's election. And the reason we keep talking about it is because it's such a big deal. And the altcoin market is overperforming. We're going to talk about 13 altcoins we gave you price predictions for. We were looking at a technical target, a very specific technical target in the form of a falling wedge. Some of those, ADA is not far off its target. Doge, SHIB, they've made their targets. In Algo start to sort of move towards its target. HBAR, which I'm very sort of thankful of. Hedera certainly was getting a bit hot as the Lord Commander of the HBAR army, but a commander's there to lead from the front. And that's essentially, what we've been doing. We really do believe in Hedera Hashgraph as a project. There's a lot of speculation right now, isn't there, in regards to the potential for some of these American-based crypto projects to actually work with government. And we've seen a lot of news circulating in regards to that, or certainly rumors. I wouldn't go as far as to say news. And I don't think that's too far out of the realms of possibility as Elon Musk looks to assemble the Doge Legion. Crazy time. I keep feeling like I'm going to wake up at some point and go back to the reality that we had before Trump, and that, we would still be under some sort of persecution as an industry. But it very much seems like there's been a 180 of that, and there's now going to be acceleration of it. And it's an amazing time to be in the markets, guys. And the beautiful thing for us is we're talking about a lot of fundamental things here, but technically the stars truly do align. And we looked at all that going into Trump's sort of victory. Let's take a look at how certain cryptocurrencies are doing on the day. So if we dive over to allincrypto.com, you guys will be able to locate all the prices of the cryptocurrencies over at the top left. We've got many things like exchange volumes, Fear and Greed, obviously the tree map, the Academy. You can create an account so you can track your portfolios, news, daily sort of updates, projects, tips, and of course, price predictions. But let's take a look at the biggest winners over the past 24 hours. In the top 50, we'll do the 50 to 100 or the 51 to 100. Because Algorand, unfortunately, you might notice, even though it's doing spectacularly today and would likely be the highest in regards to 24-hour change in the top 50, if it was in there, I think Algorand is still a project that's 72 in market cap. I don't believe it deserves to be there. And the last person that we interviewed from Algorand was Mark Van Lerberg, who, of course, was one of the individuals that was instrumental in taking Android, the largest platform in the world in regards to smartphones and the applications of those smartphones, or the applications of the Android or smartphone platforms, if that makes sense. I'm definitely not doing that justice. He's now at the Algorand Foundation doing the same thing that they essentially did with Android, which is take it from thousands to billions of users, the largest used platform in the world in regards to the sort of phone world. And there's some sort of comparabilities there in regards to what we see with, or what we saw with Android as a platform and what we see with Algorand as a platform. It's a platform that people can use and develop upon, build apps that people can use. And perhaps Algorand has a far broader scope, and many of these layer ones have far broader scopes in regards to what they can truly do due to the financial element of them, if you will. But we can talk about Algorand a little bit later when we dive into some price action. So we can see XRP. Where's my XRP army? I think you guys are one of the biggest communities that I want to win in this space, just because since 2017, you've suffered nothing but a lot of hate. I say nothing but there's a lot of unbelievable amount of love in the XRP community. I think we did a video the other day that got like 90,000 views. One of the most viewed XRP content creators that there are. So thank you for that. But the XRP community has really suffered a lot of persecution since 2017 because it's been essentially forming this triangle pattern that everyone's highlighting. We believe it's a HVF. For people that don't know what a HVF is, there's only one place you'll find out what it is, and that's with Mr. Francis Hunt, the market, and the Crypto Sniper. A lot of people are sort of guessing at how they're going to predict the price, but I think we've got about a $19.20-ish price prediction for it. $19.20 something cents price prediction for it, and we do think it will get there. We think the fundamental drivers for XRP are set, and certainly technically we see that pattern coming to fruition. But XRP is up 21% on the day. It's up 59% on the week and 61% over the past 30 days. Then we have Cardano ADA. Now, we never stopped loving ADA. I've been running a stake pool. Anybody that has ADA and wants to stake it and support us, do go and consider staking with the all-in stake pool. We've been about since 2021. Now we're going into 2025. In fact, it'll be upon us very soon. So we run a stake pool for Cardano for 4 years. Needed to check my hand-eye coordination there. But it's up 18% over the past 24 hours. There's lots of news circulating in regards to Charles Hoskinson at the moment. He posted a picture of him at SpaceX. I'll be releasing a video on that after this live stream, so do check in for that. It's up 47% on the 7-day, and 30 days, it's up 87%. So it's beating XRP. Then we have Stellar. I kind of look at Stellar, and some of you are going to probably get at me for saying this in the comment section, as XRP's little brother. So I own both XRP and Stellar, and I own Cardano. And the interesting thing is that I think these will they're very much setting up similar patterns. In fact, Stellar looks like what XRP did going into 2017, and they're probably both going to do very well together. And I ultimately think that's going to be the case. So this is up 8%, not quite XRP's 21%. Obviously, it's up 34% on the weekly, 45% over the past 30 days. And then we've got Hedera Hashgraph, arguably, I'm going to say my favorite layer one in regards to betting that institutions will actually use it because it's run by institutions, largely for institutions. Don't hate me. You might disagree. That's fine. Just something I'm personally betting big on. It's up 31% over the past 7 days, and of course, 25% over the past 30 days. Then we've got the likes of Tron, a dark horse. Pay attention to Tron, ladies and gentlemen. It's a dark horse in this market. I do truly believe that. If we see an arms race, which I think we're already seeing the signs of, towards this technology, it goes beyond trying to control the new global store of value. It goes to the point where you want to try and control the very systems that the global world works on from a social, political, and also financial point of view. And these layer ones are going to enable that world. And I think Tron, I've got a sneaky suspicion there's going to be something to do with China as it relates to Tron. Just my opinion. Then we've got Ethereum, Classic, Litecoin, Filecoin, Bonk. The meme coins are going absolutely crazy, aren't they? I mean, look at Bonk year to date. 1,300% up. Leo token. I still couldn't tell you what Leo token does, by the way. I should really look into that at some point. Polkadot. Cronus has done spectacularly. One of the biggest gainers on the second biggest gainer in the top 50 on the 30-day chart. Obviously, Dogecoin is number uno. Remember, when we get into our sort of altcoin predictions, Dogecoin was one. Let's find it. That we were looking at doing spectacularly, along with all these others that we're going to be recapping on and showing you where they're at. The good news with many of these is a lot of them still have further to go. And then, of course, you've got the likes of Pepe, another meme, recently got listed on Robinhood. Cardano, Sui, again, very interesting project founded by the people that originally set out to facilitate Facebook or Facebook's Libra or Deus or Demo, whatever it ended up being called. And then, of course, they disbanded and formed Sui. Got the likes of Bonk, XRP, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, of course, some of you may say, well, where's Algorand? Because it's doing so well today. Well, of course, it's not in the top 50. And I wouldn't be surprised. Let's go over the past 24 hours. Yeah, it's number 72 in regards to positioning. I know some of you are a fan of Aerodrome Finance, and there's many others out here. You know, Phantom, I think, could make a resurgence. VeChain, we used to be such a big fan of VeChain. I still am to a degree, but I like a lot of other sort of projects out there, perhaps more so Helium. You know, this space, I mean, what is it today? 2.9 trillion, so $3 trillion. We've got technical targets that see it double. And of course, Bitcoin's going to be the large part of that. But we can take a look at when we dive into some technical analysis on the space more broadly, and then we'll dive into our altcoins where we think the likes of Total 2, which is the altcoin market specifically taken out in Bitcoin, Total 3, which takes out Bitcoin and Ethereum, others, and then we can look at some ETPs and products and things like that. So what a marvelous time the cryptocurrency space is having. Really over the moon to see the likes of Algorand up 25% today. And some of those altcoins, some of those sort of what I would call blue chip premier altcoins, premium altcoins when it comes to layer one smart contracts. I'd consider Cardano in that, HBAR, Algo, Link. I'd like to see a lot more out of just because of what a big deal it's truly going to be. Near. We're going to look at some of the predictions in just a second. What I'm going to do beforehand, though, guys, is dive over to your questions and see what questions you have for me before we continue. No Crow. Interesting. Okay. Some people that aren't quite Crow fans. Yeah, no questions then. Cool. So let's now talk about the space as a whole, the altcoin sector as a whole, which is breaking out right now. And we're going to dive over to the total cryptocurrency market cap, because this is a reflection of the space as a whole. You know, this has Bitcoin in it, has everything in it. And ultimately today, this sits at $2.9 trillion. I personally believe, based on this bull flag, and depending on whether you want to take the flagpole from here at 1.4 trillion or whether you want to take it from when the move officially started at sub a trillion, that you are potentially looking at a $6.1 trillion market cap for the entire cryptocurrency space. Now, I'm personally majority in altcoins, and I think we've got a number of confluence in regards to the direction that the altcoin sector represented in Total 2 is heading. We have a bull flag here that takes you to 2.4 trillion. The current size of the altcoin market right now, altcoin just meaning alternative coin to Bitcoin, that's where it originally came from, currently sits at 1.1 trillion. So there's a 2x for the entire space to come. And we also have an inverse head and shoulders here that essentially could take you to $3.7 trillion, which means the market as a whole is essentially, or could potentially see, a $228 gain. Obviously, some coins are going to absolutely rocket with those smaller market caps out there in regards to the law of sort of small numbers. Now, if we think the entire cryptocurrency space is potentially heading to 6.1 trillion, and the total 2 is potentially heading to 3.7, that means Bitcoin dominance is going to come down because Bitcoin won't be 60%. Bitcoin won't be 60% of the overall market. And I think that's quite likely to see. A lot of people are very nervous about Bitcoin dominance. I think there's some good news there and some bad news in the sense that it's not rolled yet. But I think the good news is that it's still to come, in my opinion. And when we look at how long, let's do it with you, Bitcoin dominance typically takes to roll, and we'll use the Brave New Liquid Coin Index. We'll take it to a 2-weekly chart. And we'll throw BTC DOM on. Bitcoin dominance typically takes around about 238 days post-halving to actually roll. And you can see we're not even there yet in regards to when this typically rolls and when the bulk of your bull market, certainly for the altcoin sector, actually takes place. So the good news with Bitcoin dominance is it's not rolled yet. The bad news is that it's not rolled yet, if that makes sense. But the total cryptocurrency market cap, excluding Bitcoin, is pointing in the same direction. Bitcoin is the total market cap, of course. Total 2, total 3, also very much setting up in a similar fashion. So you can derive that Ethereum's actually potentially going to be quite a large part of this, because this is now taking out Ethereum, and we only have a target to around about 1.5 trillion. So Ethereum, and where's ETH DOM today? It's currently only 12%. So I could see this gaining. And there is a number of technical patterns that we're looking at for ETH dominance. So total 3, very much looking like it wants to reach for that upside. Of course, others, which is everything outside of the top 10. We can essentially see on the shorter term getting to 95 or 958 billion, and then potentially taking a run all the way up to 1.9 trillion. So if you take that off the total market cap, you can sort of get a feel of where the top 10 will be, including Bitcoin, which is very interesting. We also have confluence in regards to the likes of the ETPs out there, the crypto ETPs, exchange traded products. If we look at the likes of Grayscale Digital Large Cap Fund, this has been something we've been watching since 2023. And there's been a lot of technical patterns that have all sort of been met. And now we're looking for that bigger technical pattern, that we've got the fundamental news to see it get there. So technical analysis will always bring you early to the party or tell you the news before the news. That's what it's very, very good at. And when we look at Grayscale Digital Large Cap Fund, we've got a technical target taking it to 175. And recently, there was the filing from Grayscale themselves to actually convert their digital large cap fund into an ETF, just like we saw with Grayscale's GBTC, Grayscale's ETH, GETH. And by the way, we got the targets right for both of those. We're now about to see for a product that represents altcoins, and that's going to be very positive for them generally. And the fundamental news that sees this target met, because there'll be a slight discount here, I believe. We also have the likes of Bitwise Top 10 Crypto Index Fund. These guys recently just filed to convert it to an ETP on the New York Stock Exchange. And with the likes of a new SEC regime, which is why we covered what we did at the start, it seems very probable that you're going to get this. And remember, this represents altcoins, which aligns with the total market caps, which we just looked at. It aligns with the direction we think Bitcoin's going in. And it aligns with what we're going to do in just a second, which is dive into some smaller altcoins before we start to sort of take a look at some of your questions. Then, of course, we've got 21 shares, crypto basket ETP, exchange traded product. We've got sort of similar targets for each of these representing the altcoin market. And then we've gone through the total market caps, which we ultimately think are on a sort of trajectory to the upside. And certainly Ethereum, we've prophesized, is going to do something very, very similar. And let's uninvert this chart to the SPY. And you can see what we're looking at here. In our market mastery course, we like to teach that markets move in 4 phases. You've got a base, you've got an uptrend, you've got a top, and you've got a downtrend in very simplistic terms. And and this is very much Ethereum's base. This is its breakout. When you break out of any resistance point, it's often met with a pullback, and you'll find that resistance point is now flipped to support. Whether that's breaking out of a base, like a phase one base that we look at, whether that's breaking out of an inverse head and shoulders, or a head and shoulders, whether that's breaking out of a trend line, like you'll see with many of the falling wedges that we have, you'll often get a retest before you see that continuation. So the altcoin market generally, wherever you look, is only going in one direction, and that's to the upside. And that's technically, fundamentally at the start, we spoke about some sort of great things that are going on with the industry from more of a sort of US, biggest market in the world, regulatory and fundamental point of view. There's an arms race going on now when it comes to this technology that countries are going to look to leverage to grab power globally, and certainly from the US's point of view, maintain dominance globally. So there's a lot going on, guys. We're happy to sort of report on it day in, day out. So if you're not already a subscriber, do go and check out that subscribe button. Of course, there is quite a few of you in here now. Likes and comments are always greatly appreciated. Let us now talk, before I come on to your questions, about the altcoins that we gave you going into the election. So we looked at these altcoins on the 16th of October. So what's that? Just 1 day shy of a month ago. In fact, a month ago, we gave you 13 altcoins ready for big gains. And today, we very much are there. And the pattern that we were identifying with these altcoins is a falling wedge. It's a very reliable pattern. Technical analysis works. Technical analysis, in my opinion, is the best way to try and predict the future. You don't know what the future event's going to be, but you know that something's coming that's going to ultimately send the price one way or another. And a great example that we gave people of a falling wedge, let's go all the way back here and find it, was Ethereum Classic that I remember trading back in 2019. And this is a perfect example of a falling wedge. You've got your 1, 2, 3 impulses. You've got a breakout. You've got a retest before you really skyrocket and make the target. It looks like what Dogecoin did, which we were predicting. Of course, we looked at this schematic here, which is, I think, a very good schematic of how a falling wedge looks. Again, you can see this big impulse, smaller impulse, even smaller impulse. And that's what these wedge-like patterns are. You're getting that kind of compression of price action that leads to an expansion at the other end. And you can see that with the altcoins that we're looking at today and the altcoins that we were predicting were going to do rather well, which we're going to be talking about. So let us talk about these 13 altcoins, because some of them are doing spectacularly. Algorand was the first one that we were looking at. Then, of course, Hedera Hashgraph, Cardano, Filecoin, Dogecoin, Akash Network, Shiba Inu, Near Protocol, Jasmy Coin, Render Token, SushiSwap, Chainlink, and Arweave. Some have done better than others, but the first one that we looked at, which is a great one to talk about today, given that it's doing so well, is, of course, Algorand. And this is where we were, and we were saying you're likely going to see over 100% gains in the short to mid-term, being the next 1 to 2 months, or 3 months, sorry. We'd like to give ourselves a little bit of leeway. Predicting the markets is easier said than done in regards to getting the time horizon right. The markets don't dance to your beat. They dance to their own beat. You're there as an observer, and you've got to be that in as humble fashion as you possibly can be. But this, of course, is Algorand. We had broken out, and we were very much retesting, which is what we were expecting. And let's take a look at how Algorand has fared thus far. So this is our first altcoin. Let's go and find it on the chart, and you can see just how well this has done. And this has higher to go, ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion. In fact, you're going to retrace this entire move. So I think we're not going to say by the end of the year, but certainly going into next year, you're likely going to see an Algorand price that is potentially double where it is today. I don't think that's going to happen in any form of a long period of time. The bull market is well and truly here. We've got that signal to us from fundamental news all the way down to technically looking at the total market caps, looking at crypto ETPs, and of course, looking at altcoins individually. And the markets more broadly. For those of you that haven't considered becoming a patron, now's the perfect time to do so. We do meetings every Sunday and Wednesday. And ultimately, Sunday's meetings are all about getting that macro picture right. Wednesday's meetings are more of a sort of ad hoc, you guys can ask me questions sort of thing. But since we sort of looked at this, Algo is now 75% up. So we're not far from that over 100% gain that we were prophesying. That's very much on the table. When it walks, talks, and quacks like a duck, it's a duck, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, the next altcoin that we spoke about was Hedera Hashgraph. Now, we were saying this potentially could provide over 200% gains in a more longer term. And you can see where we were here, the very similar pattern. You've got 1, 2, 3 impulses. You've got a breakout, a retest. And then we were expecting some sort of a pretty epic move on the back end of that. And you sort of, Hedera Hashgraph, I feel like a lot of people sell HBAR because they feel fatigued and fed up with it. And I think that's exactly what they want to happen with this project. We've said it's going to do a Cardano-like run in this bull market. And anybody that was familiar, Cardano, for me, in the last bull market, really moved that financial freedom needle in my life. It went from cents to $3. I think we've got HBAR at cents, and it's probably, in my opinion, no guarantee here, going to go into the dollars. But you can see this is starting to show some real signs of life, certainly since we originally looked at it. And again, off its low here, still today you're 65% up. At one point, it was nearly 89% up. And it's no coincidence that you bounced off of this trend line and have sort of been finding it as support ever since. So that's altcoin number 2. Altcoin number 3, of course, is Cardano. Wow. Got to admit, I didn't expect this to pump as hard, but we knew that something was going to happen and we knew that a pump was coming. Let's dive into ADA, and here we go. So this is when we were looking at it. Breakout, retest, continuation, just like what we see with ETC. Breakout, retest, really supporting, not much, very low vol, and then a big break to the upside out of this falling wedge that is very textbook in regards to its mannerisms. And this today, ladies and gentlemen, from this low is 111% up. $111% up, which is pretty spectacular to say the least. If we now dive over to, I believe the next one is Altcoin, 7% up today. So Cardano doing unbelievably well. If we now dive over to Altcoin, this was another one that we gave that's been a little bit lackluster up until recently, and is still very much the case. But this is very much just forming some sort of a base. This is still yet to break, ladies and gentlemen. And the beautiful thing about many of these altcoins is in regards to the macro, they're really at sort of support level. So what I mean by macro is the bigger time frames when we dive into these. You can see bounced here, bounced here. Don't short support, guys. Don't be that person. You've also got a clear support range here that you're likely going to bounce off of. And you've got a falling wedge going into that support. So this is one that still hasn't quite moved yet, but it's to come. And we think it's going to be, again, in sort of line with what we've seen thus far, seeing sort of hundreds of percents in relation to gains. Dogecoin, the big one. I mean, this has been the best performer. Meme coins have done unbelievably well. And when we look at Dogecoin, again, 1, 2, 3, a real sort of squeeze, a breakout, a retest. And boy, oh boy, just how well Dogecoin has done. Breakout, retest, holding that support, and boom, continuation. And if you look at since we called this, Dogecoin is 250% up. Since the 16th when we called this. And this is likely going high. Who knew? It's unbelievable to me that we now have a government agency called Doge. But, if you're salty out there, don't be. This is how it goes. It's not about what you want. It's about what the markets want and what the various players that can move the markets ultimately determine. But Dogecoin's done absolutely spectacularly. Of course, we've got a cash network. Very bullish on this project from more of a broader time frame. A little bit further behind than the others, but you can see clear support here and obviously a breakout. This one not doing as well, but I think its time is coming. Only 49% up and at 1.73% up. I say only 49%. We're so sort of used to big gains in the cryptocurrency space. That sort of a percentage return doesn't seem spectacular to us, but trust me, it is in regards to the traditional markets. Then, of course, we've got Shiba Inu, the other meme coin that we highlighted. 1, 2, 3. And off she goes. Since highlighting this, you're 68% and 115% up. So I have 2 meme coins that I hold. It's not Shiba and it's not Doge, unfortunately. But I do have a little bit, very small positions in regards to meme coins. And the interesting thing is, don't be one of these bigots when it comes to meme coins, because the reality is they've outperformed most other coins. And that was the case in the last bull market. And I was one of those bigots that said, well, I'd never buy meme coins because they're not fundamentally changing the world like some of these other projects. They went on to be the best performers. Take that for what it is. Never underestimate the madness of crowds, is what we always say. So we've got Shiba Inu. We're at coin 7. Obviously, we've got Near Protocol. Very much heavily pivoted in regards to AI, breakout, that retest. And then you've seen a real sort of skyrocket on the back end of it. And the beautiful thing about these is they have higher prices to come. They're on a Dogecoin-like journey and yet to have seen Dogecoin-like gains. So this, of course, is Near Protocol. Then we've got Jasmy Coin, breakout, retest. Let's see how Jasmy Coin did since we highlighted it. Not done too well, but it's getting there. It's likely forming up some sort of bottoming sort of pattern here that it will see continuation on the back end of. Remember, the total market caps confirm all of that. Then I believe the next coin that we had was Render. So we had that breakout, that retest. And since that retest, we've seen real continuation on the back end of this. And this is up nearly 61%. Sushi Swap. I'm not a fan of DEXs personally, or really DeFi. I'm under no illusion that DeFi is going to do well. It's just not where I choose to play. And this hasn't done too well at all, has it, Sushi Swap? In fact, it's really just where it was when we looked at it. But ultimately, that wedge pattern is still there, and there is going to be a breakup on the back end of this. I think Uniswap was one of the others that we looked at, or actually Chainlink and Arweave. There's many falling wedges out there, but Chainlink we'll look at. We'll stick to the top 12 as we've got evidence that we were looking at these going into it. Let's have a look at Chainlink. Where are you? Here you are. You can see 1, 2, 3, a breakout. And this has likely got higher prices to come. This is also what we would look at as sort of phase 2 support. So you can see this was your base when we were accumulating the majority of our Chainlink. Breakout, retest, continuation. You'd also have volume profiles that align here. Breakout on big volume, declining volume. Now you start to see that volume reassert. And then, of course, we looked at Arweave, which has been probably one of the biggest underperformers in regards to these falling wedges that we've looked at. Because it's still very much in its falling wedge and yet to break. But it will do. The altcoins are really going in the same direction. Of course, we looked at Sushi, Uni. There's something like Rune, for example. Something very interesting going on, I think, with 4chain. So very happy with how these altcoins have performed. I know some of these altcoins are some of your favorite altcoins. We're going to continue to bring you daily news on these. Algorand, obviously the biggest winner today. But overall, probably Dogecoin, then Cardano out of these falling wedges have been the biggest sort of stars. And we're expecting the others to sort of start to play catch up. And even the likes of ADA, we still think has got higher to go. And when we look at ADA, just to talk about ADA, because I know a lot of you are a fan of it, but generally you can use this for a barometer for the altcoin space as a whole. It's in such a great place. It truly is. You're here in relation to the last cycle. You're here. You've had this first run, you've had this really deep pullback, and now you've got the rest of that to come. And you're going to, we say that BTC dominance being where it is both a good and a bad thing, in the sense that it's still yet to roll, and the bulk of that bull market typically occurs when it does roll. We can go into a whole list of other altcoins that we also looked at. We've got another article somewhere that we'll probably do in our next live stream, where we were looking at breakouts and phase 1 retests. In the same way that you have that for the likes of the SPY, breakout, retest, continuation. Tesla doing really well for us there. We don't want to go too much into the sort of stock market. We want to sort of keep it altcoin focused. But the altcoin market is absolutely prime, ladies and gentlemen. And we've got far more gains, in my opinion, to come. That doesn't mean there's not going to be hiccups along the way. But generally, the space is in a pretty marvelous place. So what I want to do now for the last 15 minutes or so is dive over to some of your questions. We do apologize. We have multiple sort of technical difficulties throughout this stream. So we do apologize. Thank you very much for bearing with us, guys. It is Friday, and we will be likely clocking off in a couple of hours after this. So I'm going to go ahead and dive over to your questions. Let's see what you've got for me.
So one of the most questions is is a good idea to buy Cardano now?
Is it a good idea to buy Cardano now? Great question. Well, we're not a financial advisor, and obviously we can't give you any financial advice. But really, you wanted to be buying Cardano when it was in this wedge. And just because something's done a lot doesn't mean it's not going to continue to do even more. Nvidia is a great example of that on the sort of weekly time frame. This has been a chart that people have continued to short at every single pullback, and it's fundamentally given people the opposite. It's technically just destroyed people in regards to price action. You know, people have lost so much money trying to short Nvidia, and I feel like the altcoin trajectory for the markets is generally on a similar path. So if you believe, here's how I'm going to answer that question without giving you any kind of investment advice. If you believe that we're in a bull market, the question you've got to ask is Cardano going to go higher? I would say it is, in my own opinion. And I think really we're just at the start of what is going to be a pretty monumental journey for the altcoin sector. We looked at the total market caps in great detail, and ultimately they're predicting higher prices or a higher market cap. Where's Cardano going to fit into all of that? In my opinion, it's going to go with it. I never really would suggest that people buy into candles like this. I'd always wait for a pullback. And I think you are undoubtedly going to get one, but where? Is that pullback going to occur higher up at $1 and you're sort of going to pull back down? I'd certainly look for this to see this sort of 81 cents range to see some sort of resistance. I wouldn't be too greedy. Personally, you know, you want to be accumulating throughout this sort of base where we've been accumulating, or looking at the sort of breakout of this falling wedge. Can sort of trick you a little bit with the consolidation that you saw here. But I wouldn't rush in. That being said, this train is moving, guys. Don't get too greedy. I see it all the time. People saying, oh, I'll just wait for a pullback, and then that pullback never comes. Had a friend that looked for that pullback in 2020. Was it 2021? It might even been 2020. And he never got it. And Bitcoin went to 64K from then, before obviously pulling back and then going to 69K for that sort of second high in the prior bull. So don't be too greedy, but also look for weakness. So it's my opinion that Cardano, like the rest of the space, is going to go higher. When you choose to buy is really up to you. I would have been doing the majority of my accumulation whilst it's basing. It's still very much in this base, you know, not broken out of this sort of real support area yet. But it's starting to do that, and we think it's got a run similar to this, potentially ahead of it. Not to the same percentages, I don't think. I don't know. But I think these percentages were, you know, from the sort of sense, 100-something X this was. Cardano 100Xing today is, what, $60? Don't think you're going to quite see that, you know? Yeah. But we do think it's potentially going to go higher. Let's take a look at some more questions.
Still bullish on ICP?
Yeah, massively bullish on ICP. ICP makes a hell of a lot of sense to me for a number of different reasons. We're such a big fan of DeepIm because what I love, in some senses, I'm a Bitcoin maxi. And let me explain that in the sense that I ultimately believe that Bitcoin is the maximalist, or stands the maximum chance of being the only real store of value in the cryptocurrency space. Bitcoin is unique in many properties, and there's no competitors to it. But this is what the Bitcoin maxis don't understand, and a lot of people don't understand, is we've moved away from altcoins trying to be Bitcoin. They're not trying to be Bitcoin anymore. These altcoins, cryptocurrencies, is a bad name for them. The only reason we call them cryptocurrencies is because Bitcoin was trying to be a peer-to-peer cash that uses cryptography, cryptocurrency, a currency that uses crypto. And it's like you see the people at Bankless, not to throw any shade on them, they call Ethereum ultrasound money. Ethereum is not money. We're never going to use it as money. You know, and I see, one of the most dumb things I ever see is people using Bitcoin to pay for things. Why do you want to do that? You want to spend the very thing that is protecting you from an inflating system that you can use as cash, and you should just get rid of it, you know? So with ICP, back to the topic at hand, sorry for the rant there, guys. This is a blockchain that cuts no corners and does everything from the ground up. And I think through what they're doing, they can replace the current stack that the current internet has in regards to IT, which is multi-trillion-dollar industry. When you look at hacks, when you look at things like this, what ICP is trying to do is basically implement smart contracts at those weak points that will eradicate that. And it's a blockchain that doesn't go back into the Web 2 world at any point. So let's use Cardano, for example. I run a Cardano stake pool. We're lucky to have our own servers, but the vast majority of Cardano servers are on Amazon Web Services. So the vast majority of nodes running Cardano are on institutional hardware. It makes me laugh when people throw shade at Hedera, by the way. It makes no sense to me at all, but because I could argue Hedera is more decentralized than many other blockchains out there in many aspects. But a lot of Web 2 projects, like for NFTs and things like this, they'll go and store them in Web 2 places, whereas ICP doesn't do that. It has its entirely own stack that essentially runs this fourth generation blockchain that you can run AI systems in an entirely decentralized manner on. Most AI systems use Web 3, some element of Web 2, which is kind of defying the point and reintroducing the problem that Web 3 is trying to address. ICP has got that figured out. There's thousands of years of sort of retrospective development involved in it. Dominic Williams is a genius. I think you're really going to see the implementation of ICP broadly in everyday life because it solves many, many problems. And from a technical point of view, we spoke about Ethereum looking very much just like the stock market or the S&P 500 breakout retest. And this, of course, is Ethereum, what we're referring to. ICP, when I see this, it makes me very bullish. When you get that breakout, let's pull up the volume. On huge volume, then the retest on declining volume, you start to see the volume come back. And on the shorter term, it's not moving right now with everything else because it's not the sort of hot topic, but this is likely going to set up, this support is likely going to lead to a real breakout to the upside. And remember, I said that. How high could ICP go? It's really anybody's guess. I could certainly see it getting maybe back into the hundreds and potentially then some, not the thousands. I really don't know. Who knows what the future looks like, and it depends on the ultimate usage of it. But ICP is a project we never stop being bullish on. And I hold ICP. I'm still bullish on it. In fact, I think I'm marginally down on my ICP bags. That's how much, even here we were accumulating some of it. But this is very much broken out of what we look at as phase one into that phase two. And there's that continuation to come, just like we saw with the S&P 500. Let's take the next question, if there are any.
Yeah, that's Virtual Pro that is spamming the chat about asking you about if you are still bullish on Polkadot.
So I love Polkadot. I truly, so the reason I love Polkadot was because of Cardano, which sounds crazy. But when I watched Charles Hoskinson's original whiteboard video back in 2015, and he set out this idea, and very early on this idea that you could have one chain that you could essentially use to validate multiple chains. You could scale in a parallel fashion by essentially duplicating the consensus. That was what input endorsers were or are for Cardano. And Polkadot went ahead and did that. And remember, both Gavin and Charles would have known each other. They both worked on Ethereum. Gavin Wood was the individual that wrote the Ethereum yellow paper. He helped or really pioneered the whole EVM, everything like this. Unbelievably intelligent guy. He left Ethereum vowing to essentially solve the issues that it had, and he created Polkadot. And if you look at the 50, 2 or 3 or 4 parachains, which are essentially their own blockchains that ultimately rely on the relay chain, or it's now different because you've got Jam and everything coming. And of course, you've got instead of calling them parachains, we're calling them sort of, they're almost like individual computers, if that makes sense, or cores in a computer. A lot more of a complex project when you try and understand it than most out there. But Polkadot is an absolute achievement of cryptography. It's an absolute achievement of this entire industry. And I still absolutely love the project. I've still got connections with lots of people in the Polkadot ecosystem who think it's an unbelievably amazing project. I just don't think that many people are like, why is Dogecoin, a fundamentally lame project, doing better than something like Polkadot? More people, more retailer into Dogecoin and the prospects of getting rich, and they've heard about it. And of course, you've got Elon Musk, et cetera, but meme coins generally. And that's what this space is. A large part of this space right now is about people trying to get rich. There is going to be this recognition fundamentally of what's going on here. It doesn't mean that gambling or people speculating on price will go away. And I don't think it should. I think it's a great thing that people speculate on price. This industry wouldn't be here. I hate it when I see these ding-dongs saying, oh, you're only here for the price. I'm in it for the tech, dude. Like, come on, man. Why have you bought that? Some people genuinely are. I get that. The vast majority of people saying that are just gaslighting you. This industry wouldn't be where it is today. These projects wouldn't exist if it wasn't for, in the manner that they do, including Bitcoin, if it wasn't for people speculating on the price. In fact, Bitcoin's entire ethos is speculating on the price. But Polkadot is an amazing project. It's essentially where Ethereum's trying to get to. Ethereum now can't scale on that singular layer. So it's doing the same thing that Polkadot's doing in regards to involving all these layer twos and rollups and things like this. Polkadot really set the standard for that and is furthest ahead than most. And if you look at some of the applications that these layer ones that are built on the layer zero being Polkadot are doing, Indonesian government we looked at, we interviewed them from Mandala Chain. You've got Deloitte. We interviewed Kilt that are working with Deloitte in regards to identities and digital identities. You've got an unbelievably rich ecosystem. You've got computing, you've got deepin, you've got finance, you've got everything in some of the best kind of tech fashion that there is. And people really aren't that interested just yet. But that is going to change, I think, at some point. The question is what's Polkadot's value in that world? Because, of course, these layer ones have their own value proposition. Like, how valuable is the internet? Well, maybe if the internet had a token, it would be the most valuable asset in the world. I don't know. Anyway, we'll leave it there because I'm sure there's more questions that we want to get into. But yeah, we love Polkadot. The reason, we just haven't really made a dot video in a while, but we've got some lined up. We've also got some interviews with ecosystem players that we really want to get out to. But Polkadot's a great, great project. Next question, if there are any.
We have another question by Colt Bryant. Does Bitcoin dominance peak it right now?
Yeah, good question. I'm not going to even try and attempt Bitcoin dominance calling. So it's annoying for us because those of you that have been following me long enough will know that this is when we called the bottom for Bitcoin. Right about 16K. I had an entire community of people that said, right, it's time to start buying cryptocurrencies again. And what we should have done was go solely into Bitcoin and now pivot out into altcoins. We didn't do that. But our bet has always been that altcoins will outperform in the longer term. Has Bitcoin dominance peaked right now? I don't know. And I always think I have to be honest when I don't know. I've had numerous attempts at calling Bitcoin dominance rolling. Even Benjamin Cohen for the first time said, okay, it's kind of it for Bitcoin dominance, or he's now sort of saying it's time. Somebody being very right on Bitcoin dominance. This is going to go until it goes. I think there's fundamentally a different story with this bull market that's very heavy on Bitcoin. We will see that shifting, I do think. But in regards to calling, and there was an inverse head and shoulders here, there's target you haven't quite met. And this was brought up by one of my community members in my Discord. So shout out to the individual. But this target essentially takes you to 61.5. Now, that might be the ultimate top, and you're not quite there yet. There's a little gap here. But I don't think it's far from rolling. I'd like to see it roll here and then potentially set up a broader pattern that we can sort of look right into the future at that sees Bitcoin dominance roll to the 20-ish% range, sort of 21%. We've got a lot to do. This has got to roll, and then we've got to see some sort of formation here. But if it looks to want to get down to sort of 21%, I think that comes on the sort of recognition of the space or the maturing of it, if you will. It's all about Bitcoin right now. Actually, one thing I'm very interested in is how stable coins are sort of going to play a role in the future world, because the US government isn't going to allow, I believe, and Trump's vowed to not CBDCs, but what they're going to do is use stable coins instead. And I think something like Ripple is key in regards to all that. So I don't know on Bitcoin dominance, I'm afraid. I would say it's not far off is the best answer I can give. In regards to has it topped right here, right now, I really don't know, unfortunately. Let's dive into some more questions if there are any.
Raphael asks if you have any thoughts on Solana.
Yeah, of course. So I own Solana. And the reason I own Solana was because it's just too strong to deny at this point. This is chosen. Solana, interesting fact here for you guys, and I know this because I'm sad enough to look at CoinShares report every single week. Every Monday I'm there waiting for it, and I'll get a notification on my phone. And CoinShares report tracks digital asset inflows. We'll take a couple more questions after this, guys, and I think we'll wrap it up. And if we look at the cryptos that have done well, it's Bitcoin, Solana, and there's a few others out there, but Bitcoin, Solana, and Ethereum are really the ones, certainly Bitcoin and Solana, that have seen the most institutional inflows. Up until the Ethereum ETF, Solana saw more inflows in regards to exchange-traded products than Ethereum. And if you look at how well it's done and how well we think it's going to continue to do, me picking it up in the hundreds range, I'm happy with, certainly if I think it's going to around about $2,000 based on this inverse head and shoulders. And I really think that's quite a likelihood. Again, just like with the breakout and the retests that you get, look at where you've been supporting off of this key level. And now you're breaking out, you're breaking free, and you've started that next journey in line with the majority of the altcoin sector. So we have about a $2,000 target for Solana. That's just where I think it's going, and I own some as a result of that. It's not my largest position. I have larger positions. I'm really very heavily focused in the AI sector. AI is my biggest probably sector, and then DeepIn, and I think they go hand in hand. I really do wonder if DeepIn, decentralized computing, has a mining element in it. I really need to talk to someone in a greater level about that. I know it's quite hard to do, but if somebody could figure that out, and we could collectively pull like mobile phones together to mine Bitcoin, because I think it's something like 100 million or 10 million mobile phones could enable one of the smartest or greatest large language models that there are. So we like Solana. Helium is another one that we looked at. This had a falling wedge that you broke well and truly out of. We do very well on falling wedges. We're at 1, 2, 3, breakout, retest, but it also is in a sort of broader phase 1 base, breakout into phase 2, retest, continuation. Next question. Question man.
So JV asks, thoughts on Quant this bull run?
Yeah, it's been underperformer thus far, hasn't it? But that doesn't mean that it's not going to do well. I've not looked at the Quant chart in a long time. So I don't own Quant anymore. I used to own quite a bit of it. It's just not done what I wanted it to, you know? And if you look at this chart, it's been a rough ride. And I think at some point you have to kind of say to yourself, what would I rather be holding? And this hasn't done much. Doesn't mean that it won't continue to do much in the future. Just right now it hasn't. And that's the reality of it. However, if you look at Gilbert Verderin's credentials, if you look at where Quant's being mentioned, I think there's a clear overlap with the traditional financial institution that's going to embrace the blockchain sector. And also, I think this idea of an overledger system is very useful. The question for me is, does Chainlink do that already? But is it a window such as Quant? You know, the way I look at Quant is very much like a search engine for blockchains that you can then click on the various websites, the blockchains, and use them in whatever manner you want. So I love Quant fundamentally. From a price point of view, this chart doesn't lie. It's been a shit show. Excuse my French, and no offense to any French listening. And I take that for what it is. So I don't actually own Quant anymore, but that doesn't mean I'm not a fan of the project. I don't see real utility potentially coming out of it in the future, but I want to see the price pick up a little bit more. Let's dive into perhaps one more question, then we're going to wrap things up.
Any thoughts on Flux?
Yeah, wow. So I own
by
Flux.
RD. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we both own Flux.
Yeah, we have.
Let's talk about Flux. Again, a computing play, one that I'm very bullish on, but it's still very much basing. And this could just be a giant, massive head and shoulders. I've looked at this. That could essentially see it run to around about $6.90, which is a what, 20x from where it is? No, 12x. So I think there's projects out there that are far more impressive from a price point of view, but fundamentally it's very interesting. There's an NVIDIA crossover there. We've also looked at actually using it for things like websites and things like this. And it is truly impressive, but there's lots of different sort of deep in plays out there. Flux is a very small position of mine, but it's a project that I think could do quite well and that I have already paid attention to. We did have an inverse head and shoulders here. You can see this very faintly that made its target and it sold off since then. Is that now setting up a broader one? I'd like to see it. And we like the project, but we want to see some sort of, we want to see it get out of this sort of basement, if you will. Right then, ladies and gents, I think I am going to wrap things up there. There is 928 of you watching. So a massive thank you guys for spending your Friday evenings with me. It's always an absolute pleasure. We do apologize for the technical difficulties that we've had. There has been numerous of them. But I'm going to love and leave you on that note. Remember, nothing that we say or do here is financial advice. Have a fantastic Friday, guys. And I'll see you all in the next one.